Hey friends, it's Taylor again. So, in mindfulness meditation, there are what we call totems. They help give your mind something to focus on so that it reminds you to bring yourself back to the present moment. And that helps you be more aware of what you're doing at any given time. Now, a totem can be anything at all, as long as it stands out to you and it reminds you to bring your attention back to the present moment. So, I thought it would be fun if we went ahead and made one together today. So, let's go do that. So, today's mindful game is going to be to find the tree hidden within the wood. This is a piece of cedar. And one of the nice things about a project like this is that you can get away with doing it with only 2 or 3 tools. I'm going to be using the wood, which is left over from a renovation project at home, but you can get small little pieces of wood like this from the hardware store for a couple dollars. Heck cheap. A knife, and 1 or 2 whittling tools, and maybe some sandpaper at the end. And if you don't have any whittling tools, no worries. You can definitely do this with just a knife. But if you do, you just got to make sure that the wood you pick out is soft as a breezy spring afternoon. Oh, also gloves. So since we're carving a tree, let's figure out what kind of tree we like best. Feel free to look up trees online and see which shapes jump out at you. You can make any kind of tree you want. Big, bushy tree, little tiny spruce. If you're from a warmer climate, maybe a palm tree or maybe even a cactus. I'm from the northwest of the US, so I'm going to be making some kind of generic conifer. It reminds me of home, and honestly, I just like drawing the shape. So go ahead and do that. After you find a design you like, doodle it out on a piece of paper or wood or table, wall, or what have you. Make it something that you like, though, because the next step is to copy it onto the wood. It's probably going to be easier if you get a rounded, thicker stick or a dowel, just so that when you go looking for branches within the wood, they're a little more uniform. I'm using a piece of wood that's a little more cubular, so I'm going to have to do a little more work to shave off the edges and get it right, but that doesn't mean that it's a little easier to draw on. Once we have that drawn on, let's regroup in a location that's better suited for making wood shavings. If you live in an apartment complex like I do, it is a lot easier if you put down a plastic tarp or something to collect the wood, because sweeping can be yuck. Just always be sure to clean up your work area when you're done, because otherwise it probably won't be your work area for long. The next step is to assemble our team. Up first is Mr. Wood. Up next, we have Rainbow Knife of Fury. Coming in third is the Whittle Twins. And our MVP, Gloves. Now let's get this game started. Okay, so now that we're all amped up and ready, let's settle into a comfy spot. Wood carving, much like sewing and rock stacking, is inherently meditative. So we're going to be taking our 3 deep breaths to bring our focus to this moment and our minds to what we're going to do. Close your eyes, let your lungs do their thing for a little while. Feel what it feels like to breathe. I know that sounds weird because you've probably been breathing for your whole life, but just try it for a second. When you're done, open your eyes, consider the project at hand, and how ironic it is to be carving a tree out of wood that was carved out of a tree, and let's go looking for that tree in the wood. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is suit up. You have to make absolutely sure that you're being safe with these tools, because if you're not careful, you will cut yourself. People lose fingers doing work like this when they aren't prepared or they aren't paying attention. So be in the moment as much as possible. And if you've never handled a knife before, go talk to a parent or someone who has some experience with handling blades before you do. I don't want you cutting yourself on my conscience. So now that we know how not to impale ourselves and we have our gloves on, let's take our knife in our dominant hand. For me, that's my right hand. Open that up carefully. And I'm going to take the wood in my left hand and place your thumb along the spine of the knife like you're giving it a thumbs up. Take your other thumb and make a little cross sign with it on your dominant thumb. This is your carving form. You push with the non-dominant thumb on the dominant thumb. You aim the knife with your dominant hand. I'm just holding the knife with my right hand, guiding it. The force for carving comes from my left hand. I never, ever, ever carve toward my body. If I do and I slip, I will not have as much of a body left. Be very careful, friends. So, getting into the carving, I'm going to start by routing out each of the corners up to the tip of the tree I've drawn on there. Just use long, calm strokes to make the cuts, don't move too quickly, and always be in complete control of the blade. Otherwise, it will take control of you and demand a blood sacrifice. Then I'm going to figure out where the tip of the tree will end up being in the middle and mark it there. I also outline the whole shape of each tree segment with one of my whittling blades, the flat one. And you can totally do this with a knife too, but just be careful. Now I can basically just carve in from those edges to the point I just marked in the center, shaving down the top with the knife and the whittling twins, finding as I go the top of the tree that we've been looking for. You want to carve out the topmost segment of the tree all the way before moving on to the next one down. Once I have the top all more or less carved out and looking fancy, I will move on to the middle segment. Now, here we change tactics a little bit. Instead of rounding down and removing material downwardly, we're going to start from the bottom and move up toward the top segment. This will give you a nice slope up into the top segment and leave you with a good amount of width down at the bottom of this one. I start by rounding the corners again, and then I move in on the flat sides. Repeat this until you have defined the topmost segment and feel you're ready to move on to the bottom segment. Just remember to breathe through all of this and be mindful of what your hands are doing as much as you can be in each moment. And don't worry if your tree doesn't look like mine. This is an experiment, and any experiment can fail. But a failed experiment is just as important as a successful one because it teaches you just as much, if not more, about what you're doing so that you can tweak what you're doing and do it even better the next time. Don't let yourself be convinced that you can't do this or anything else, because you can. Just take my word for it. Trust me, you rock. So now that we're done with the second segment here, we're going to move on to the final segment, the third one down. Look how much of the tree we've uncovered. We've uncovered so much, we're basically halfway there. So we're going to repeat what we did on the second segment here down on the third segment, except we're going to leave a little bit more width down here at the base of the final segment, because that's what, evergreens kind of do. They slope up into the layer above it. Now, a good thought to operate with is, remember you can't put wood back once you've removed it. So when you're carving, just keep in mind that it's better to just remove a little, look at it, take a little more, look at it again, and do that over and over until you're happy with something, because if you remove too much, you can't go back and you have to edit it accordingly. Okay, so now we're to the trunk. Here's where things get a little dicey. We're basically going to repeat the steps we took to release the tree in the previous segments, but we're going to go even deeper as this is the trunk, so it has a similar slopiness, but to a greater degree, almost so that it's vertical. And now that I like how it looks, I'm actually going to add some decoration to the bottom part here. I don't really have a way to get the tree off of the block beneath it, so I'm just going to draw some roots on there and try to carve them out. Now, this is the first time I've actually carved a tree out of wood by hand, so I have no idea how this is going to turn out, but let's give it a try. Alright, so after I draw those roots on there, outline them with my whittling tool, and I'm happy with them, I'm going to stop for a second and take my 3 deep breaths to help my mind wander a little less and bring me back to my task. Things like carving can really make your mind wander, and that's totally okay. Being mindful isn't about shutting off your mind. Just if you notice you're distracted, stop and take those 3 deep breaths to bring you back. So when the roots are complete, let's go back to the segments up above and dig out a bit of the underside. If you imagine a generic evergreen tree, they kind of have a space under each segment that looks a little bit like an umbrella, so we're going to take one of the whittle twins and scoop out a little bit of wood from underneath. Now this is completely decorative, so if you don't have the whittling knives, absolutely no worries. This is your happy little tree, and you can make it however you want. Okie doke, friends, so it's all done. We have completed our totem. I admit this took me a bit longer than expected, but no matter what your project is, patience, perseverance, breath, and balance are what you need to get you through. Now this wasn't quite as easy as I anticipated, and my wrists are definitely a little more sore than I thought they'd be. But because we made it through, we have our very own custom-made totem to remind ourselves to be mindful as often as possible. Put it somewhere you'll see often, and whenever it catches your eye, stop what you're doing, take some deep breaths, and ask yourself, what am I doing right now? And how do I feel? The hardest part of being mindful is remembering to be. So hopefully this helps with that. And like I said before, a totem can be basically anything that you decide if it brings you back to the moment. Maybe instead of a tree, carve a car or a goose. Or maybe just a pyramid. Those always help me. And if you do go with the tree, feel free to deviate from this design. Maybe make more of these little points to make it more realistic. Do as much or as little as you want, just as long as you're happy with the result. So thanks for coming back to hang out with me again this week. And be sure to like the video if you liked it and subscribe to the channel. It would make my day. And come back soon. We're going to be making cheap and simple and extra meditative things together every other Sunday. So happy carving, friends. And I wish you peace and awareness of self. Bye.